training, his dark hair cropped close. To anyone watching, he looked like every other pilot stationed here. But inside, his heart hammered with the weight of every stare, every whisper he had. In their eyes, he was theory without battle. A man who had never smelled smoke in the cockpit or felt his skin prickle at the lock-on tone of enemy radar. He kept walking, jaw tight, eyes forward. The vast wingspan of the B-2 loomed behind the fence like a shadow from another world. Every time he saw it, something inside him stirred. A mix of reverence and hunger. This machine was the hangar doors clanged open. Inside, voices carried. He stepped into the glow of overhead lamps where a cluster of pilots gathered around a briefing screen. Their laughter stung sharper than the cold night air. "Cole," one of them said, leaning back in his chair. "You read another manual today? Maybe you can bore the enemy to death." More laughter. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the helmet under his arm. He wanted to answer, to shout that skill wasn't only measured in scars and medals. But he bit his tongue. Every outburst would only fuel them more. Instead, he moved to the edge of the room, silent, letting their words pass through him like wind over steel. His father's voice returned to him, rough hands on his shoulder when he was 16, standing outside the small Kansas workshop where jet engines came and went for repair. "Son, don't let anyone tell you where you belong. Engines don't care who your daddy is. Air doesn't care what. Into that storm." And when they did, he would show them he was more than the mechanic's son. Later, alone in the barracks, he sat on the edge of his bunk. The base was quiet, only the faint hum of distant generators breaking the silence. He pulled from his locker a photograph. A boy standing in a wheat field, Kansas sky blazing blue above, watching contrails cross the heavens. The boy was him. The dream was the same. He whispered to the photo, as if to the child he once was, "I'll prove it. I'll fly higher, farther, braver than they ever dreamed." The night deepened. Beyond the window, the B-2 rested beneath the floodlights, its black wings drinking the stars. To most, it was just another weapon in America's arsenal. To Ethan, it was destiny calling, silent, relentless, impossible to ignore. And though the world still doubted him, though every sneer and smirk pressed against his pride, he knew the truth. His time was coming, sooner than anyone expected, because the sky did not belong to those who mocked from the ground. It belonged to the ones who dared to rise. And Ethan Cole was ready to rise. The war room was silent, except for the low hum of the projector. On the wall, a satellite map glowed with crimson. Circles overlapped in concentric rings, each one marked with missile symbols, radar stations, and anti-air batteries. The center pulsed like a heart of steel. General Hartman, a man whose face looked carved from stone, turned to the assembled pilots. His voice carried no warmth, only weight. "Intelligence confirms it. They call it the Iron Shield. A defense grid built on next-generation radar, high-speed surface-to-air missiles, and overlapping coverage. Every known aircraft, fighters, drones, even cruise missiles cannot penetrate. Anything that flies in does not fly out." No one spoke. The room felt colder, as if the map itself had sucked away the air. Hartman continued, "The Iron Shield guards a single target, their central command node. Destroy it and the shield collapses. Leave it intact, and we are blind, vulnerable, and cornered." Ethan Cole sat near the back, listening, pulse steady but sharp. The map glowed red across his eyes, the threat almost alive. Another pilot spoke, voice edged with fear. "Sir, we're saying it's suicide. No plane can cross that net." The general paused, then said words that changed everything. "Not no plane. There is one." The screen flickered. The crimson glow faded to black, and then an image appeared, sleek, menacing, a silhouette of wings curved like a predator's talons. The B-2 Spirit. Gasps rippled through the room, though every man and woman present had seen it before. Tonight, though, it was no longer a symbol of deterrence. It was a key, the only key. The B-2 stealth profile makes it invisible to conventional radar. Their new systems will strain to track it. The words "return alive" hung heavy, almost sarcastic. Hartman's eyes swept the room. "I need one pilot." No one moved. Chairs creaked. Eyes shifted to the floor, the wall, anywhere but the general. Veterans who had once boasted of dodging missile fire now shrank from the thought of entering the Iron Shield. Ethan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. This was the moment he had imagined. In sleepless nights, the challenge whispered by every doubt, every sneer he had endured. The silence pressed in. And then, before fear could choke him, he rose. "Sir, I'll fly it." The room snapped toward him. Some mouths curled into disbelief, others into pity. One pilot muttered, "He's crazy." General Hartman studied him. His stare was long, measuring. Finally, "And I believe I can do what needs to be done." Hartman's silence stretched, as though weighing life against death. At last he nodded once. "Very well. Prepare the Spirit." The hangar buzzed, with controlled chaos. Technicians moved like shadows around the jet, loading fuel, calibrating stealth coatings, programming the onboard systems. Ethan walked beneath the wings, his hand brushing the smooth black skin of the aircraft. It felt cold, almost alive, like touching the hide of some mythic beast. "Are you sure about this?" a voice asked. It was Captain Rivera, one of the few who, tight, then softened. "You sound just like your father," she whispered. The words struck him like a spark. His father, the mechanic who had taught him engines, who had told him the sky answered only to screens, switches, and silence. The HUD glowed green, steady, waiting. The control tower gave the order. Spirit 1, cleared for takeoff. The massive bomber rolled forward, engines humming. Map, painting arcs of danger. Hartman stood rigid, eyes fixed. "He's inside the zone," someone whispered. And Ethan Cole, alone in the cockpit, breathed slow, steady. The Iron Shield loomed ahead. Missile batteries waited, radars hunting. Every warning screamed that this was death. But he remembered the wheat fields of Kansas. The boy staring at contrails. The vow whispered to the sky. And he whispered now to himself, to the Spirit, to destiny. "Let's show them the impossible can be done." The black bomber vanished into the enemy's net. The mission had begun. The runway lights stretched like a ribbon of fire against the blackness of the Kansas night. Engines roared low, a beast restrained, ready to leap. Technicians saluted, their faces lit by the glow of floodlights. His boots rang against the metal, each step echoing like a countdown. Inside the cockpit, he lowered himself into the seat, straps clicking into place, helmet sealing with a hiss. For a moment, the world shrank to the glow of instruments. "Spirit 1, radio check," came the tower's voice. "Spirit 1, loud and clear," Ethan answered. His voice was calm, but his hands, resting on the controls, trembled ever so slightly. The order came. "Spirit 1, cleared for takeoff." Engines surged. The runway blurred. Weight pressed him back as the bomber lifted from Earth. Invincibility. The Iron Shield was waiting. In the war room, officers leaned over glowing screens. General Hartman's jaw clenched, his voice clipped. "He's on course. Approaching the outer." Ping, ping, ping. Enemy search beams were sweeping. Somewhere far below, operators hunched over their scopes, hunting for shadows. Ethan adjusted his throttle, nudged the yoke. Tiny movements. Precision was survival. His forehead glistened with sweat under the helmet, but his grip never faltered. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself. "Trust the Spirit." The bomber slid through the Iron Shield had sniffed something. Ethan's breath froze. "Not now," he muttered. He banked slightly, adjusting altitude, feeding false signals into the enemy's sweep. Seconds passed. With his father. The summer sky was endless, blue and clean. A jet streaked high above, contrails white against the heavens. His father's voice. "Up there, Ethan, fear is just another cloud." a blade brushing against him. Every moment was a coin toss between invisibility and death. Then another alarm. Louder. Closer. Ethan's eyes darted to the display. Multiple search radars. Converging. "They see me," he whispered. Or, "They think they do." His hands moved faster, dancing across controls. He throttled down, angled left, then right, tracing a path through overlapping. Nothing but in his eyes, for the first time, was respect. The night deepened. Hours felt like days. Inside the cockpit, fatigue clawed at Ethan's mind, but adrenaline refused to let go. He forced his eyes to stay sharp, his hands steady. Finally, the coordinates appeared on his HUD. The command node. The beating heart of the Iron Shield. A fortress of steel and electronics. Buried deep, surrounded by missiles and soldiers. And yet, from above, it was just another cluster of lights. Fragile. Mortal. Ethan swallowed hard. This was why he had been chosen. Not because he was the best, but because no one else had dared. His finger hovered over the release switch. The B-2 glided silently, unseen, perfectly aligned. "Almost there," he whispered. From collapse. But retreat was not in his blood. He steadied his voice. "Not tonight." And with a flick of his wrist, he plunged the Spirit deeper into the jaws of the enemy. Ready to finish what? He tapped the comms panel. Spirit 1 to command. "Do you read?" Nothing. Only distortion. A roar of white noise. He tried again. Spirit 1, requesting confirmation. "Repeat, do you copy?" Silence. The realization sank into his chest like ice. He was cut off. No voice from the war room. No guiding eyes. Only him, the bomber, and the night. Outside, the stars stretched endless. Itself pressed in. Breath shallow, heartbeat pounding, he closed his eyes. And memories rushed in. Kansas. Summer fields stretching gold beneath an endless sky. A boy lay in the grass, watching contrails scar the heavens. His father's voice came warm, steady. "You see that, Ethan? Every contrail is a story. Some end here, some go further than anyone believed. The sky doesn't." Shattered, leaving him back in the cockpit. Alarms pulsed faint, warning of enemy sweeps. But his chest steadied. The doubt thinned. He whispered, almost a vow. "No turning back. Not tonight." With a firm hand, he pushed the throttle. The Spirit surged forward, black wings slicing the dark. Back at the base, Rivera paced the war room. "He's not responding," a technician said. "Comms are jammed." General Hartman folded his arms. The weight of years pressed into his expression. "He'll decide for himself," he said softly. "Every pilot reaches that moment. Alone." Missiles waited in their silos, claws curled. Ready. One misstep and he would vanish in fire. But his movements were sharp, precise. Every nudge of the yoke was measured, as though the machine itself trusted him. "Easy," he muttered. "We're ghosts. They can't touch us." Yet sweat poured from his brow, soaking his collar. His breath came heavy, but his eyes burned bright. A sudden jolt. Binash. But survival brought no relief. Only a deeper weight. Every mile forward meant more risk, less chance of return. Still, he pressed on. For a heartbeat, the world went still. No alarms. No warnings. Only the hum of engines and the faint whisper of wind. And in that silence, Ethan spoke. Not to the crew he didn't have, not to command, but to himself. "This is it. The line between." The choice was made. "Sorry, command," he whispered. "This story doesn't end with me turning back." He leaned into the controls, guiding the bomber straight into the storm. At the base, Rivera pressed her palms together. "He's still flying," she murmured. Hartman's gaze never left the screen. "He's chosen." Up above, the night wrapped Ethan in its cloak. The Spirit glided, silent, relentless. Every second was a razor's edge. Every breath borrowed time. But inside the cockpit, his heart was no longer torn. The fear was still there, but it was not in control. As missiles stirred from their cages, Ethan Cole smiled. not with arrogance, but with quiet defiance. If death waits ahead, then let it wait. I'm not done yet. And with that, he pressed forward, deeper into the darkness, choosing not life, not death, but destiny. The crosshairs glowed steady on Ethan's HUD. The command node loomed below, a cluster of hardened bunkers and antennas that pulsed like the brain of a beast. Every radar beam, every missile command, every threat to his world flowed from that single point. He steadied his breath. One chance. No mistakes. Bomb bay doors open. The words felt heavy in the cockpit. Hydraulics hissed, and the Spirit's belly split open, revealing its payload. Ethan's thumb hovered above the release. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing what came next. Then he pressed. The bomber shuddered as bombs dropped free, falling silent, invisible darts of judgment. Locks, all converging, all hungry. Alarms screamed through the cockpit. Lights flashed crimson. The night itself seemed to roar.
Missile inbound.
6.
Closing fast.
His pulse hammered, but his hands were calm. He tightened his grip on the controls, mind sharpening to a razor edge. No panic, he whispered. We're still ghosts. On the ground, crews manning those missile batteries shouted, eyes wide as their screens painted the target. Lock confirmed. Fire. Streaks of fire tore into the night, 6 spears of death racing upward, arcing toward the shadow they hunted. In the war room, Rivera gasped. They've got him. General Hartman's face was stone, but his knuckles whitened against the console. In the cockpit, time fractured. The missiles were 3 seconds. 2. The missiles screamed upward, guidance systems clawing for a lock. And then, they lost him. One by one, their seekers blinked blind. The black sky swallowed their prey. Steady. Alive. For a long moment, he let the silence wash over him. Every muscle burned. Every nerve trembled. But his hands held firm. The B-2 Spirit glided free, invisible once more, a shadow among shadows. At the base, the war room erupted. Cheers, shouts, disbelieving laughter. Rivera's hands covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. He did it. My God, he did it. Even Hartman's mask cracked. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Not a boy anymore, he murmured. A legend. Above the world, Ethan did not cheer. His eyes stayed on the horizon, calm, steady, shadowed with thought. He had destroyed the command node. He had outflown death itself. But he knew this was not the end. The war was not finished. The sky would demand more. And somewhere beyond the horizon, greater storms were already gathering. He tightened his grip on the yoke, guiding the Spirit toward home. The boy from Kansas had flown into the heart of the impossible and returned. Now whispers would follow him. The ghost of the night sky, a name born not from triumph, but from survival. And as the stars wheeled above, Ethan Cole allowed himself one final thought. This is only the beginning. The B-2 Spirit vanished into the dark, wings wide, silence absolute. A shadow, a phantom, a legend in flight. The runway lights stretched like a path. The landing gear touched the tarmac with a hiss, soft as breath. Sparks glimmered for a heartbeat, then vanished. The B-2 Spirit rolled to a halt, engines whispering into silence. A ghost had come home. The hangar floodlights bathed the bomber in white. Ground crews rushed forward, helmets tilted back, eyes wide. Some froze mid-step, mouths open, unable to believe what they saw. Ethan Cole emerged, helmet tucked beneath his arm, flight suit streaked with sweat. He stood tall but not triumphant, not smiling. His gaze swept across the sea of faces, each filled with awe. No one spoke, not yet. Then applause erupted. Hands clapped, boots stomped. Cheers thundered against the steel walls of the base. The same voices that once mocked him, mourning. But Ethan heard none of it. General Hartman approached, flanked by officers. His stare was hard, but his tone carried something Ethan had never heard before. Respect. You brought her home, Hartman said. You broke the shield. Alone. Ethan gave a single nod. No salute. No words. Only a quiet acceptance. Rivera stepped forward, eyes bright, smile trembling at the edges. The air buzzed with voices. Commanders replayed satellite feeds. Analysts pored over missile data. Strategists scribbled furiously on maps. Ethan sat apart, silent. He replayed every second of the mission not as victory but as survival. Every warning alarm. Every missile lock. Every choice balanced on the edge of death. And he knew this night was not the climax. It was the threshold. Recruiters would whisper his story into eager ears. The myth had begun. But Ethan felt none of it. The adoration slid past him, meaningless against the silence of memory. Because he knew what they did not. The shield was broken. Yes. But something far worse waited beyond the horizon. The enemy would not sleep. They would rebuild. Stronger. Fiercer. And the sky would call him again. That night, as the base quieted, Ethan stood alone beside the Spirit. Moonlight traced the bomber's black wings, silver against the dark. He reached out, resting a hand on the cold surface. This machine had carried him through fire, through fear, through legend. Yet it was not invincible, and neither was he. He closed his eyes. He remembered Kansas fields, the boy who once stared, but as something else. A symbol. Symbols do not rest. Symbols do not falter. And Ethan Cole knew he had become one. When reporters asked for a statement, he gave them only a single line. It was the mission, nothing more. They twisted it into poetry, into prophecy, into myth. But for Ethan it remained truth. The mission was done. The war was not. As the sun rose, new traps, new shields of steel. The world would test him again. He did not fear it. But he did not welcome it either. He simply accepted. Because Ethan Cole was no longer just a man. No longer just a pilot. He was the ghost of the night sky. And ghosts never rest.